Hey everybody, it's Ben from BA's Drum Academy here. Welcome back. Today we are tuning our toms. Tuning a drums is an essential skill as a drummer. If your drums don't sound that good, it's gonna really affect the style of play, it's gonna affect the feel of the play, and it's not gonna sound very good in general. So tuning your toms is something that you really need, and tuning all your drums is an essential skill. Now, to be successful today, you need to have a drum key, a drum stick, and a quiet place to also tune your drums. If it's not really a quiet place you're having other background noises, it's gonna probably be a problem when you're trying to listen to the drum and see if it's in tune or not. Now today I'm gonna be tuning this tom right here in front of me. This is a 12-inch rack tom. This is a brand new drum head I'm gonna be putting onto this drum. This tom here has weathered a little bit. I've had this tom head on for quite a few months now, and I play my drums quite consistently. And so you can see this tom has some dirt marks on it from the drumsticks, which is normal, especially for a coated drum, especially the color white. But it also is getting a little harder to tune because it has these little divots. And you might be able to see them. They have these little divots inside the tom here. So it's getting a little harder to tune, and it's becoming a little bit of a problem. I also notice the sound of the drum whenever I'm playing it. It sounds quite hollow now, and I know that the head has been overstretched. And the more I try and tune it, the worse it kind of gets. So it's time for a replacement. So today I'm going to be replacing this whole front tom head, the batter head here, the side of the drum head that you hit. I'm going to replace it with a brand new one, and I'm going to show you how I tune drums. Now, before we get started, I do have to say something, that the way that I tune my drums might be a little conflicting from other sources that you might find online. You might notice that all drummers have their own kind of unique style or specific way that they tune drums. And I'm probably certain that I'm gonna get some comments, especially about this video, saying, oh, you shouldn't have done this, Ben, or oh, you should always tune your drums like this. What are you doing? And I'm just gonna tell you, this is just how I tune my drums to make my drums sound good for me. And if you learn something from this, and then by all means, feel free to use it. I just always try and keep things simple as much as I possibly can. I struggled with learning how to tune drums for the longest time because there is so much information out there and certain ways that people do it. It's very hard to kind of follow. So I'm gonna show you how I tune my drums, and if you have other suggestions or things that you wanna try, by all means, you can send a comment towards the video here and we'll sort it out. But I'm gonna show you how I do it instead. Before I get started, I just want to say a couple things that you need to know, a couple words that you need to know before we start tuning our drums. I'm going to refer to some things on the tom here that you may have never heard of. For example, the word lug. Now, the word lug refers to these little bolts or these tightening rods that are around the drum, which we will tighten and loosen to make the sound of the drum sound different. We also have a batter head, which is the top of the drum or the side of the drum that we hit with our drumsticks. And then we have a resonant head, which is the bottom of the drum head. And we're also going to be tuning that a little bit today, but I'll show you kind of how they work together to make the tom sound good. So let's get started with this tuning here. So first thing we're going to be doing is we are going to be taking off the drum head. So we're going to take our drum key and we're going to just simply take it on here, and we're just going to completely take it all the way off here. Now, it doesn't matter what order, especially with a drum head, an old drum head, it doesn't matter which order you loosen the drum heads, because this drum head is already broken and already gone. So I'm just going to be loosening it here as fast as I can. Now, throughout today as well, I'm going to probably be speeding up through some of this. So this is a part, we'll speed this up a little bit. Okay, so I've got all my lugs loosened. Now the rim can come completely off, and now I can completely take off this front drum head. Now, whatever you do with the old drum head, I mean, now it's a fancy frisbee, or you can dispose of it properly. But you can see here how this has quite a few divots, especially on the other side. And this is also a good opportunity as well. Now that I'm done with this drum head, it's a good opportunity. Now I have the drum completely off, and now I can have a quick inspection of the inside here, making sure all the little nuts and bolts and screws are completely tightened. Maybe you have a dusting tool like I do. I like to give them the inside a little bit of a dusting because, I don't know, looks are just always something that I always admire. And now we have, especially this edge here, you can see a little bit of dust. But now we're ready to go, we're fresh. Okay, so now it's time to get the new drum head out. So I've gotten a brand new drum head. Now this time I opted for a clear drum head. And this is an Evans EC2S drum head. It's a 12-inch size. Now this is brand spanking new, and it has not been stretched at all. And all of these drum heads are gonna stretch and probably make a few cricks and cracks as we start to tune the drum on. Now, I always like to have the logo at the top of the drum here. Just, I don't know, it always looks nice. And it's just a thing that I do. And now we're gonna put the new lugs back on and the rim back on. Now, before I do that, I'm just gonna have a quick inspection of the lugs themselves. There are these little washers with these lugs as well. And mine are metal, but sometimes some drums have plastic little washers with it. So we have a bolt or a lug, and then we also have a washer that goes with it. And the washer is important because it holds the tuning in. So what I'm gonna do, now I'm gonna place the hoop back on here. Oop, lost one. I'm gonna place the hoop back on. Ooh, there's the washer. See, you gotta make sure you'll have the washer and the lug. They can fall off. Now we're gonna place this in, and now what we're gonna do is we're just gonna make sure that all the lugs are gonna be placed inside the little spot for the bolt. Nice, and make sure it's all on here. Very good. All right. And now we're ready to start tightening up the lugs. Now, one thing I will mention that some people have said and I've seen lots of resources in different drumming over the years and different styles of tuning. One style of tuning has asked before to seat the drum head, it's called, and where they actually put weight or press into the drum head to overstretch it so it stays in tune for longer. If you're in a pinch and you need the drum to stay in tune for a long time, like you're putting a brand new drum head on right before a recording session, A, don't do that in general, but B, that's a fast way to do it. However, I never recommend, and I would not recommend you seat this drum head by putting pressure into the drum head. And the reason why I do that, I like to let the drum stretch naturally. It's just risky to seat the drum head by putting pressure into the middle of the drum head and trying to force it to stretch. It's kind of like stretching your body. Like, you don't want to force your body to stretch past a point that it's not ready to. It can cause some injury and stuff like that, right? So same with the drum head. You don't want to break the drum head before you even get to use it. So I like to let the drum stretch naturally. So now what we're gonna do is we are gonna be tightening this drum head in a certain pattern. Now what I've done is I have this little tuning tool. It's kind of neat. I took an E-ring. It's an Evans E-ring, and this is basically a plastic circle that goes on drums to help us or to help dampen the drum, especially when we're playing it. But what I did is I actually just took one of these and I wrote numbers on it to remind myself what order I need to tighten things. When we're tightening lugs on a drum, we have to go in opposite directions. We do not tighten in a circle like this or the opposite way. We always tighten opposite sides. So you'll see here I tighten perhaps number 1 up here and then number 2 down here. And number 3, 4, 5, 6. We're always tightening opposite sides. Now I have 1 drum key, but if I had 2, I could do both at the same time, both at the same time, both at the same time. And the reason why I tighten opposites is to make sure that the drum head is tightened in an even manner. If it's not tightened in an even manner, it can actually damage the drum head, and then we got a bigger problem from the start. So we're gonna just tighten it nice and evenly throughout. Now, the first thing you're gonna do, when you put this just on, it's all nice and loose right now, we're not even gonna use the drum key yet. We're gonna take our fingers, and what we're gonna do is we're going to finger tighten all of these lugs using our fingers. So we're gonna tighten all of these with our fingers nice and evenly. Now, I've got a long way to put the threads down, so it's gonna take me a second. And yes, this is real time, so this is how long tuning drums takes, especially when you're doing it from brand spanking new. And anytime I tune drums, sometimes I like to do it right from fresh. Sometimes tuning is a little easier where it's just 1 or 2 little turns and you're back to where you were. But this one is gonna take a little longer. Now, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm going to just use my fingers here and I'm gonna tighten number 1 as much as I possibly can using my finger strength. Almost there, good. Okay, now I'm gonna go number 2. Good, and then number 3. And you can kind of see I'm following the order. Now, no matter how many lugs your drum has, number 4, this drum has 6 lugs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Your drum might have 8. Sometimes they even have 10 or 12. The bigger the drum, usually the more lugs it is. Number 5. Number 6. Okay, we're getting closer now. Good. I can grab the bottom here. Now, once I finger tighten them 1 time, I'm gonna just go around again and tighten them all 1 more time, as much as I possibly can. And I'm gonna kind of keep going in this order until I can't possibly turn it any more using my fingers. There we go, a little hard on the fingers. That's normal, completely normal. Now, some people ask me, what order do I tune in? Like, do I tune the top one first or the bottom one first? I always recommend for toms specifically, I like to tune the batter one first, the top one, because then I get the tone I like, and then I can tune the resonant head to kind of match it. For most times I tune though, and the only thing I'm really changing as I'm retuning things is just the batter head. I don't actually tune the resonant head fresh from start. I don't really touch that one. It just sits there and vibrates. So sometimes it might stretch, or if I'm going from a cold temperature environment to a warm temperature environment, it can change, but otherwise, won't. Okay, I think that's all I've got. So I've finger tightened every single lug here that I possibly could using my finger strength on this drum. Now, if I was to play this drum, it's not really much sound. It's dead, pretty dead sounding. And it's not ready to play yet. So now we have to tighten the lugs using our drum key. Now, our first step we're gonna do, we're gonna follow the same organizing pattern. Right now, our job is to bring this batter head up to a pitch that sounds good to our ear. Okay, that's all we're gonna do. So we're gonna bring this tuning up to match kind of a tone, sound that we desire or we want to have. Now, where I get a sound from is I like to listen to my favorite songs, and I have in my head kind of this picture or this imagination of what each of my drums is gonna sound like. Doom, doom, doom. So I'm trying to match that with my ear. So the first step though, because I'm gonna be stretching the drum for the first time, is I'm gonna actually take my drum key, and I'm gonna put it on the lug number 1, and I'm gonna turn it half of a turn, okay? Half of a turn. On each one of these, just 1 time. Okay, so I'm gonna go half of a turn. Good. I'm gonna go number 2, half of a turn. Number 3, half a turn. Number 4, half a turn. 5, and number 6. Okay, now if I was to take my drum kit or my drum stick, so you see it's starting to vibrate now and it's starting to resonate. So now we're doing pretty good. Now, it's not perfectly in tune. You might hear a little like a wobbling sound as we hit this drum. And that's because the top head frequency or tightness is not matching the bottoms. Some people also ask me, like, what side do I make tighter? Do I make the top head tighter? Do I make the bottom head tighter? Or do I make them exactly the same? And to be honest, like tuning in all drums, and like your choices of cymbals and all the choices you make about drums, it's all about sound. It's personal preference. If you like the sound that your drum makes, then keep it that way. Tune the drum however you think it sounds good, and it's gonna match your style of play and the music that you like to play. Honestly, experimenting is the best way to do this. You can, however, over-tune toms, and it can ruin the drum head, so just be careful. You don't want to make a drum do what it's not designed to do. So just be careful, just be cautious as you do it. However, some people, I would suggest you experiment with it. Experiment with maybe the top head tighter than the bottom, or vice versa, or experiment with both. So we're gonna continue here. So we got half a turn on each one so far, and now what our next step is we're gonna take a quarter turn here of each of these drum heads to get into the pitch that we want. So right now we have it at a, okay, so it's not bad, but if I take my hand and I place it on the bottom head here to dampen it, and I just hit the top, you can see and you hear how untuned that is, which is fine. We'll get there, we'll fix it later. And the bottom head, so you can hear how much higher the bottom head is, and the bottom head is not. So we're gonna tune it up just a little bit higher, as this is not quite the pitch that I want. So now, instead of going half a turn, we are gonna do just little turns now. So I'm gonna go maybe a quarter turn in this time around. So I'm gonna start with I'll bring my little map back out. So quarter turn, quarter turn, quarter turn, quarter turn, quarter turn, and quarter turn. Okay, it doesn't take much. Generally speaking, the smaller the drums, they are, the more sensitive they are to tuning. So even just like a hair turn is gonna make a big difference. So let's see what it sounds like right now. Okay, we got a pretty good tone now. It's quite high, I quite like that. So we're doing pretty good. Now let's just check the top versus the bottom. Okay, so our top head is a little lower than the bottom, but I also don't want it to be too high. So as I'm playing this, the pitch of the drum as they work together, like the sound, it's probably a little too high for me. So I'm actually going to lower the tuning just a little bit. So I turned it up a quarter, and before it was a half. So maybe I'm just gonna turn it back just maybe a hair turn on each single one of the lugs here. So I'm gonna turn it down just a little bit. So you can see what I'm doing. I'm just turning a hair, and the goal is I'm trying to get the tom to sound in close to the range that I want it. I'm trying to get it close to the note or the sound that I'm trying to hit. All right, let's give this a try. Okay, so we got a little bit of a buzz going, and it's a little bit better in pitch. Still a little high, so I'm gonna tune it down one more tiny little step. If you think of it kind of like a piano, where you're hitting two keys at the same time, if you hit the right two keys at the same time, this is gonna sound beautiful. But if you hit the wrong two keys on a piano, it's gonna sound bleh. So that's kind of what we're doing here. This is like one key of the piano, one key of the other piano. We're trying to make the notes sound pretty. So let's try this again here. Okay, so we're getting a little closer now. We're getting a little closer where we want. So I'm gonna stick it there, I think. That sounds kind of nice to my ear, so I'm gonna keep it there. So our first step was we replaced we took off the old drum skin, we put the new one on, and we finger tightened. That was our second step, that we finger tightened. And the third step, it was now we turned one half a turn, and then after that, we did small adjustments. So I started with a quarter turn. It didn't really work that well, so I turned down a little. I went too far, so I turned down a little bit. So that's why I suggest just turn small notches as you tune the drum. It's gonna make a huge difference. Now, as you start to play this drum, it is gonna stretch. It is gonna stretch. So probably if you start playing this, if you get it to a good tuning that you have, After a while, you might notice that the drum head sounds bad again after half an hour of playing, and that drum is naturally stretching. So you're gonna probably have to tune this thing back up because it's gonna sound lower again because the drum is stretched. You're gonna probably tune this up probably within half an hour of playing it. So totally normal. And it's just the way it goes. All right, now our next step after we have kind of get the pitch right is now we're going to tune each one of these individual lugs here to make it all match with each other. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my hand and I'm going to place it just on the bottom of the drum head to stop it vibrating. Okay, so now I'm just hearing the tone of the top drum. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my drumstick and I'm going to tap lightly. I'm not going to wail on it. I'm going to tap lightly at each one of the lugs from opposites of each other, opposite sides. And I'm just going to try and see if which lugs are higher or lower than the other. Ideally, I want all of these lugs to be in the same pitch, at the same tension, and to sound the same. So I'm going to go check to see if there's any mismatches and see which ones are wrong and which ones are right. Okay, so you can hear it there. This one right up here is quite a little bit higher in sound than its friend over here, and even over here. So I want to make those match. So what do I do is I'm going to I make a choice. I'm either going to tune this higher and the low ones that are low high, or take down the high one by a small hair, and maybe its friends on the opposite side or next to it very slightly. So as you adjust the tension of this one, it's going to change the sound of the others because it's like pulling and tugging. It's having a tug of war with each other. Now, because it sounds like, just quickly, that this top one, it sounds like that's the only one that's high, I'm going to lower that one just a tiny bit. And I'm just going to go just a small turn, like that. That's it. So let's recheck it now by doing the lug test again. Still sounds a little high, so I'm going to lower it just a little bit more. Okay, so it's still a little high, but I don't want to loosen it too much. A common mistake lots of people do is they hear one thing and they just loosen, and now this one's got no tension on it, and the others still work. Now, it can be for a variety of things. It could be how tight the other ones are. They all interact with each other. So this time, instead of loosening this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the others slightly up to try and match it. Because as I'm loosening this one, I'm changing the tone of this drum skin. So I'm trying to counteract it by bringing the others up. Let's try again now. Okay, still a little bit left, so I'm going to bring this one down and the others slightly up. So you see, sometimes it doesn't always work out perfectly. So if you ever find a scenario where you're like, and this is where lots of tuning problems or people get frustrated with tuning, because you're always trying to hear like the perfect pitch. So if I ever get stuck, I'm glad this happened, because this is a moment where you learn from this. I try and find, if I still can't, I try to adjust the lugs, and a lot of times it's easy and sometimes it's difficult. So this drum is being a little bit difficult today. So what you can do to kind of fix that is you can notice that, pick the lugs that you know sound good. So for example, these two opposite ones here are the tones that I like. So these two are ones that I probably don't have to adjust that much. So I've eliminated half of the problem. Now let's try the side ones. Now, in comparison to the ones I like, they are a little higher. And so that's kind of a sound that I don't want. So I'm going to loosen these two just a hair to try and match the good ones. Even a little bit more. Okay, so those are the good ones. Getting closer. Sounds like this one's okay, but this one needs a little more love. So sounds like we're getting closer. I'm just gonna slight a tune. There we are. Now let's check the bad ones. So you can see they're a lot higher, because that's just the one I adjusted high before. So I'm gonna loosen this one, leave a quarter turn there. Gonna loosen this one a bit too. Now you can see as I adjusted these ones, now the other ones made a different sound. So now, because I have, these two are kind of close and it's all a little lower now, but these ones now went lower, now I have to make adjustments. So I have to now raise the other ones. So you see, it's kind of a little bit of a game I'm playing. I'm trying to match all of them together by bringing some low, some high, and just listening to my ear. Okay, a little bit too much. Try again. Too high. Oh, we're getting closer. Now we got two low ones. Hey, there we go. Listen to that. This one's slightly low. All right, so now it sounds like they're pretty even. Now I know that was probably a little dry to watch me just stand here and tap, 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 and have you listen to all the tapping. But I wanted to do this in real time so that you can get a real sense of what it's actually like to do this. Like I said, some toms are a little more tricky than others, and so this one was particularly a little tricky today. So now I've matched all the lugs together, so they all sound the same. And I've kind of had it the pitch before. So now, because I've made all these small lug adjustments, probably the sound of the pitch of the drum itself has probably changed because I've made adjustments. Originally, before, I turned them all half a turn and then a quarter, and then I would do using my ear to kind of match it. Now, in the last final step is after I've successfully made everything even. Now I'm going to pitch check one more time. I'm going to hit the drum and I'm going to see if it sounds good. And if it doesn't, if it's too low sounding, then I'm going to bring the head up in tuning. If it's not, then I'm going to bring the drum head down. But I'm always going to make sure that as I'm doing this, I'm doing it in an even fashion. So let's hit the drum and see what it sounds like. Okay, I think this drum sounds pretty good here. So now what I'm going to do now is just for the last check is now check to see what the bottom head is going to be doing. So let's have a quick look at the bottom head, and we're just going to make some small adjustments for that. Microphone. So I'm going to flip over the drum. And let's have a quick look at this side. So this side, I have a 1-ply drum head on the bottom here, and it's a resonant head. But all I'm gonna do for the bottom check, because I think the drum sounds pretty good and it has tuning, I'm just gonna do the quick lug check one more time to make sure everything's nice and even. So again, I'm taking my hand, I'm gonna place it on the bottom batter head. So it sounds like, just on a quick ear, these two here sound a little high and the rest sound just a slightly underneath it. So all I'm gonna do is I'm just going to have a small, tiny hair adjustment to these two and tap it one more time. And so it sounds better, but now because I've made that adjustment, these two here are slightly low. So I'm going to just make a small adjustment there, not touching the one I just did before. And I'm gonna try it one more time. I don't know if you can hear the microphones, but you might less of the waving. Sometimes when things aren't in tune, especially drums, you're gonna have whoa, 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 whoa kind of sound. And as they start to get slower and slower together, whoa, 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 and then eventually it just blends into a whoa tune. That's how you know you're getting closer. Just bring this one up just slightly. And I think we're okay. So let's flip it over and hit it one more time to make sure that the drum sounds as good as I need. I'm really happy with the sound this drum is making. So now I think that I'm done tuning. So now I know this is a long process and it looked a little longer, but without me talking all the time in this video, it goes quite a bit quicker. And the only way you get better at things is to practice. So I encourage you to take one of your toms and completely take off one of the heads and get right to work and re-put it back on and see what it sounds like. You don't need to change your drum heads all the time. They'll last you quite a while. But as soon as you start to have those divots or you notice it's getting really hard to tune them, it's time for a new drum head. Now our last thing that we can do is if you notice that is doing some problem solving with just how the drum sounds. If you notice that your drum has a lot of ringing sounds to it, as in it's too, it lasts too long, like the drum sound, it sounds way too long, and you want the note and the drum to just stop ringing immediately. There's some options that you can choose. You can put some dampening on the drum. So for example, I have these little sticky things here, and these are called moon gels, and all I have to do, and these sticky little things, they just stick onto the kind of the edge there. Don't put them in the middle because you're going to hit the middle, and it makes the drum sound a little less ringy. So I'll hit it without. And now I'll hit it with. Place it back on, and this is what it sounds like with. So not a lot of change, but you might, if you were timing or kind of thinking how many, I'm counting in my head how many Mississippis I'm hearing the drum ring for. The moon gel here will take a big dampen out of it. Other options that people can choose is I've seen people put like tea towels or pieces of tape on there. And even, remember my little tool here I used for tuning. This is an E-ring, and now without the numbers of course, but E-rings are meant as well to take some muffling out. So it takes out a lot of the high note sounds, and it just dampens the drum and mutes it pretty quickly. So however you choose and whatever you think sounds the best for your drum and whatever capacity you're using, that's what I would suggest. Now, worst case scenario, if you tried all this and everything, I talked about a lot of problems here, and you saw my drum was a little hard to tune today, but if for whatever reason you try and try and try and you still can't get your drum to sound good and you can't tune it properly, there's a couple options that you might want to consider. One of the first problem checks I always do is I take the head off again and I reposition it in a different place. I like to do something called a 12-to-3 technique, where I actually take the logo at the top here and I loosen the drum head off and I basically turn the drum head from a 12 o'clock position to a 3 o'clock position. And the idea there is I'm basically repositioning the drum head to make it sit in a different spot, and I retune it again to see if that works. And if it does, then problem solved, it works, everything's fine. But if I try and try and try again, then there might be even a bigger problem at hand. If your hoop is bent, or sometimes I've had lugs that are bent, or even the drum itself could be damaged. If you're carrying it gig to gig and you're not using any protection with it, like there's no bags and you're just throwing it in and out of cars and onto stages, and it can probably damage or warp or change the drum itself. So if that happens to you, what I recommend you do is take it to your local music shop and ask one of their professionals there to try and tune it themselves and see what that arises. If they can tune it, you can learn from them of how they did it. Some drums are just special and they have a special way they need to be tuned, and some do not. Some are pretty easy. But for the most part, that's how I tune my toms. I start with taking out completely, finger tighten everything, turning everything the same even half lug turn, and then from there I'm finding the pitch, and then I'm changing the small tuning lugs. So it's a little bit tedious and it takes some time, but it's a very important thing to do to make sure your toms sound really good. So I hope this video has been helpful for you, and I hope you learned quite a lot. If you want to find out more about drum lessons and drum techniques, and you want to get some free resources, check me out on my website, www.bhdrumacademy.com. Talk to you later, folks.